Welcome to the Southern U Podcast, brought to you by Darden Archery on the OKest Podcast Network, with your co-host, Matt Brock, Jeremy Ferguson, and Taylor McMurtry. If you're looking for all things land-related in the Southeast, you came to the right place. Whether it's real estate, habitat, wildlife, or just being outdoors, this is the place for you. Welcome to the Southern U. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Southern U Podcast, where we talk all things land-related. My name is Taylor McMurtry. To my left is Mr. Jeremy Ferguson, Wildlife Consulting Services / Tutland. How's it going, Jeremy?
Good.
Good, man.
Tired.
Yeah, I hear you have been burning the roads up here lately, along with a few other people.
Yeah, a lot of miles.
Yeah, you guys did some damage on the turkey woods.
We did.
Yeah?
We did. Yeah, we'll get into it here in a minute.
No doubt. And we got a pretty cool episode because you guys have sent in your questions and wanted to ask other biologists wildlife-related questions, and it just so happens we have another one.
That's it.
Somebody that you have not heard from, at least from our podcast yet. I'm going to let Zack introduce himself because his credentials are probably way above my head.
They are numerous.
Yes, numerous. Zack from Whetstone Habitats joined us as a special guest. Zack, take it away, man.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Zack Vucurevich. I own Whetstone Habitat. I do habitat consulting for private landowners. Got a degree in wildlife and fisheries management from West Virginia University. I've been in touch with you guys for a while now. This friendship's been turning into something special. So I'm just feel privileged to be here. Excited to get started.
Absolutely.
Well, appreciate it.
And Zack is being very modest. He is quite the accomplished biologist and has written tons of content for some pretty well-known publications, and we'll probably get into some of that, I'm sure, at some point. But it's pretty cool, kind of a first full circle moment for me because Zack, I think the first time that I ever met Zack, he reached out probably 3 years ago now or something like that.
And Brad Luttrell introduced me to you.
That's right, yeah, from Go Wild. Yeah, and he said, hey, man, there's a guy that does hats. You need to call him. and it was just wild.
It's one of these hats, actually.
Yes, that's right. It's one of them.
That's awesome.
He called and said, hey, man, the guys that Go Wild said, you're the hat guy. And I was like, oh, sure, we'll take it. And so now here we are. But it's pretty cool to kind of see your journey, too, just as you've kind of grown your business and developed. And it's, pretty neat to be a part of.
Thank you.
So with that being said, we are continuing the Ask a Biologist series, and we have tried our best. Again, scheduling conflicts have sort of limited us on some of the stuff we've wanted to do in the series, but we have really tried hard to get new minds, not just us.
Yeah, new blood.
New blood involved in different perspectives and different specialties too. You guys have asked some pretty specific questions, so we've wanted to try to bring in experts on those matters, and so that answer them the best way we can.
Yeah, we bore ourselves, much less anybody else listening to us. So.
Well, that'd probably be a good time to say I'm in the Nashville area, so I'm a little further north than these fellas. So
absolutely
different habitat, but same management goals.
Yeah, but and cover a lot of territory. I mean, you go all over the country, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got clients from Montana to New York State, down to Mississippi, everywhere in between. I stay pretty busy in Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, Indiana, kind of the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
I've been getting more and more clients in Nashville and in Tennessee. That's actually part of the reason I moved here. Wasn't wanting to do quite as much traveling. And I knew the area around Nashville. I mean, we host NWTF every year. We host SCI every year. So hunting's a big part of the culture. And thinking about, starting a family down the road, I just can't keep traveling like I used to. So made the move down here about 3 years ago, and it's been great since.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, beautiful part of the world too.
Absolutely.
Really, really nice.
Yep, it is cool. And before we jump into the questions, we'll start throwing them at Zach here in a second. Any shout outs you guys want to give? That's something we do before, just kind of to start out the show.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a couple. Actually, maybe three. It's guys turkey hunting with the last few days. Of course, everybody knows I was with Brock, but Matt Moore and Trey McElrath and Austin Young. Man, we now Trey was the guy we really went with. He headed up the hunt for us. Trey used to work for me at the time and still does as an agent, but couldn't make the turkey hunting trip. So his buddy Austin AY went with us and showed us all the properties and had a big time. And of course, Matt Moore, our buddy from Texas,
Shout out to Matt,
joined
Turkey Slayer.
Yeah, joined Matt and I in South Dakota and Nebraska. And then when we finished up, he went on out to Montana. So I need to send you a picture, Zach. He was out trying to get Montana checked off the list and encountered just a straight up white Jake.
No kidding.
Yeah, and had him at 5 yards. Took a bunch of pictures of him and sent them to us. And of course, he saved the GPS location. He's going to try to visit him again in a couple of years. Probably next year
Every
if I know
predator
Matt
on
Moore.
The landscape's going to be wanting this.
Oh, there's no question. No question. Let's go out there and get that yard turkey. That's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we had a good time. So that's my shout outs.
Awesome. Zach, you got anybody?
Yeah, I'll shout out my buddy Michael. I took him out on his. He gotten one bird when he was in high school, and now here we are with 33, and he hadn't even thought about turkey hunting since. So after some poking and prodding, I convinced him to come out to my farm, and we had a great hunt. Didn't get a bird, but had a great hunt. So I just want to shout him out for giving it a second chance, and I think I planted the seed. He's hooked. He can't wait. He's already talking about next year. So shout out to Michael. And then staying on the turkey theme, good friend of mine, Jeremy Corber, he runs Fit to Hunt, fitness company for people in the outdoor space. And I just want to shout him out because he's made it a point year over year, and he's always gracious enough to share his experiences with me. But man, he takes his boys all over the country to chase turkeys, and it's just a good bonding time they have. Last year is his son's last turkey hunt before he went off and started college, and man, that relationship that man has with his kids and what he's able to share with the outdoor space is something I envy, and I just want to let him know I appreciate him. Keep me in the loop.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
No doubt.
It's great to have folks in your life like that.
No doubt.
Yep.
I'm going to shout out. It's going to kind of roll into kind of a sponsor shout out too, but shout out the guys at Tethered, Ernie and Greg. Of course, they help us out here on the show, and they are actually having like a spring sale, from what I understand. I saw that on Instagram today. So if you're in need of any saddle gear, doesn't have to be a saddle, but climbing sticks, any kind of accessories that they make that kind of makes things a little bit easier trying to get elevated and hunt, they're running, I think it's like a 30% off sale for.
Oh, that's strong.
Yeah, pretty strong.
I might have to try saddle hunting this year.
Yeah. Well, I haven't just jumped head first into it, although I've picked up a few little pieces here and there. Their one stick is absolutely unbelievable. I think it's sub-pound, right?
Yeah, ready to hunt, it is 1 pound. Like ropes, everything ready to rock and roll, it weighs a pound. So it's pretty incredible. And there's been some other, that's not to like bash anybody else or anything. There's other companies that are trying to get into that super lightweight, stick game. And and at least from what I have seen and gotten my hands on stuff, that could change, who knows. But as of today, there's not anything that I found that even remotely comes close. I mean, they're just everything from their locking system for, there's no buckles, there's no anything to clank or make noise, but that cleat that you go around and tie off is super easy and fast. And then it's the way that the sticks actually stack together whenever you're ready to leave and, stop hunting or you're ready to pack it up and throw it on your back or whatever. There's no bungee cords or anything like that. Everything just stacks together neatly, and I would use them even if they were heavier, just because of that.
Yeah.
There's no buckles and there's no bungees. Like, it's just so nice to just click them together and just go.
Well, I've never been a backpacker, hiker, deep woods hunter. Just hadn't been. But I've always heard my buddies that in the military, I may be butchering their saying, but ounces equal pounds and pounds equals misery. I figured that out turkey hunting up there this past week. Matt kept up with it more so than I did, but our first 2.5 days, I think he said we did 42 miles in 2.5 days, on foot. And when you're that far back, you're taking water and you're taking some food, and obviously you've got firearm and a vest and call. I was like, by the end of it, the only thing I had that was going with me was a gun and my little pack that goes on my chest. It's got binoculars, one pot call, and one mouth call in it. That's it. I was like, I ain't toting anything else because I had gotten to the point I was miserable.
Yeah, you understand all these guys.
I understand cutting down on weight if you're going to be doing some really lengthy hikes.
Yep, for sure. But anyways, with that being said, Zach, you ready to throw some questions that you have not been teed up for at all?
Let's roll.
Yeah.
So if you're just to let you know, we took a poll for our listeners and just said, hey, what questions, if you could ask a biologist, if you could sit down with someone who has a wildlife degree and ask them a question that relates to wildlife, what would you ask? And we got a great response. We've kind of worked through, I guess this is probably like the last fourth or third of them. So we're getting kind of to the end of it here, but they're all over the place. And it's okay to say, hey, I don't know. It's okay to be like, that's not my expertise. You're maybe better off to throw that at somebody else too. So,
all right.
But y'all know the rules around here. We generally go about 5 questions, maybe 6, and then we call it a day. So if that is okay with Mr. Zack, that's what we're going to throw at him here. First one. This is actually one, I was going to get your perspective on this because we asked it on the last episode, and none of our panel here had, Bray was here, Brock was here, and they didn't have a definitive answer. I was going to say maybe if you've had any experience with it, but somebody asked about what do you think about medicated feed for wild quail for the eyeworm prevention? Have you had any experience with that type of stuff or an opinion one way or another?
I have opinions. I don't have any experience with it. So from my understanding, it's the first medicated wildlife feed on the market. And in areas like I know Texas, they got the eyeworm is pretty prevalent. I do think there's a time and a place for that kind of stuff. If that's the biggest limiting resource, if that's the limiting factor for quail population, is they start losing their eyesight and getting plucked off by predators, and I think it makes perfect sense. I always want to caution people whenever there's a magic bullet coming onto the market that you got to kind of, approach it that way and have it prove itself, or maybe go do your own homework and vet the product itself. But if it's as advertised, I don't see anything wrong with it. Matter of fact, I would hope if it is working, it'd be something that some of these state agencies might look into. And we got to do something to help save our quail. The habitat work, it's great, but it can only be accomplished, so much on such a small scale. If you want to start making a real impact on those birds, you got to start looking at who are the largest landowners in the areas, and oftentimes that's going to be the state. So if it is as advertised and it does work, I got no issue with people going out there and putting medicated feed. One thing I would kind of caution is are there any downsides? What happens if a different critter eats some of that feed? Can you have any effects that you might not be expecting? So it's like any medication. There's going to be some stuff that they put out in the fine print, but it's a cost benefit analysis. And like I said, if the limiting factor on your farm is that recruitment and those quails getting plucked off because their eyesight's going down, I think it'd be worth a shot.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because none of us had any experience with it and didn't really know
No,
what to say. So,
not any experience with it. I'd read about it too, and my opinion is very much like Zach's. Uh, but I view the same thing. If it's supposedly a magic bullet, proceed cautiously.
yeah.
But hey, there's things that turn out to be great. I remember in the high fence deer breeding industry when the little misters
Oh, yeah.
kind of came out for all the gnats and flies,
No-see-ums
and
and
everybody
stuff,
was
yeah.
like, not sure, but apparently it helps.
Yeah.
I don't see as many of them as I used to, but I think that may be more of a maintenance thing, having to keep everything up than it is whether or not it works and is efficient. So
Well, I feel like with that type of thing, with time, it's like the truth kind of comes out.
yeah,
I mean, if that was something that really made a difference in high fence deer, living or dying,
there'd be one everywhere.
Oh gosh, yes, because I mean, you're talking about serious money, big expense, that sort of thing. And so, if it worked, you'd see them everywhere, extended period of time.
Yeah,
Well, that one was pretty clear cut.
easy and short.
Yeah.
We like that.
Yeah. Well,
Cautiously optimistic, I'd say.
there you go. Yeah. And now some of these questions are very specific, and some are like
Vague.
very vague, and we have to sort of project and go, well, I don't know if this is what you mean. I think this is what you meant, and just do the best we can. And this is kind of one of them here. How many does should you harvest in a season on a small acreage property? Now, again, what does the word small mean? And, like small to you and small to me and small to your, to whoever is different. So, take it away. Go for
All
it.
right. So I think the first thing you want to think about is what's your intention with that property? Are you trying to shoot trophy bucks? I'm going to go under the assumption that shooting large deer is your goal, shooting large bucks, in that you're not just trying to pack the freezer. If you're trying to pack the freezer, then, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Put more food plots in and keep chipping away at it. But I say, so when I'm looking at a small property, I'm looking at keeping those doe numbers and as much as you can affect it, because you have to realize that there's going to be deer. Their home range doesn't conform to your property boundaries. So if you own 100 acres and you're managing for whitetail, those whitetail home range is about 600 acres on average. Mm-hmm. So you're only going to be able to have so much you can actually do on that landscape. So as far as herd management goes for producing trophy bucks on the landscape, I mean, you can have an impact temporarily by taking out those does in terms of like production of food plots, like cut down on the number of mouse immediately staging on your area, make those food plots more productive. But in terms of numbers, I would honestly just look at what the habitat's telling you. Is there a heavy browse line? Are you getting deer bedding are the bucks bedding on your property? Here's a good one. Are the bucks bedding on your property? Or are they not bedding on your property because those spaces are occupied by the doe family groups? If you have too many doe family groups on your property, they're going to push those older age class bucks off to bed on your neighbors. So if you don't think you're getting any bucks bedding on your property, there's probably a pretty good. Those doe family groups are the most territorial, ones in the whitetail world. They're the ones that are going to push a buck off a food plot. They're the ones that kind of dictate. They run the roost. So if you can limit those numbers, and like I said, they're going to keep trying to fill in over time. So it's something you'd have to stay on top of. But limiting the number of doe family groups occupying that particular property can open up the door for, it's all spatial area. You're just making more room for those bucks to move in and be able to utilize the property. So it's kind of hard to come up with a number with something like this, but I'd just say, right, look at what your property's telling you. And again, what are your intentions? If you want those bucks, if you're going to treat your whole property essentially like a sanctuary and you want that buck bedding in one location, you want to make sure he's not getting harassed by all the yearlings and those doe family groups, then maybe you should start to take a few more does off the farm.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I mean too. Like, we're having to sort of project, I'm assuming this is for trophy whitetail, maybe not, but if it isn't, and it's strictly just, I just want a healthy deer herd, I just don't want to over browse my, my property or whatever, then maybe
Yeah.
take
And,
more.
and one thing I'll add is absolutely talk to your neighbors too, and try to find out what they're doing as well. Because if you don't, and everybody's treating it like, well, I don't necessarily know what my neighbor's doing, but I'm going to assume they're not killing a whole lot of deer, and yet they're harvesting, equal number. At times you can run into a problem with lack of communication and over harvest or under harvest. So
well, and that's a good point. Whereas wildlife cooperatives, every time I'm doing a consultation, I'm asking that landowner, "What's your relationship with your neighbors? Do you have a good one? Do you have a bad one? Do you not have one? What can we do to improve that? If it's a bad relationship off the rip, you might be stuck. But if there hasn't been a relationship in the past, or if it's cordial, forming something like a wildlife cooperative where you can get all those neighbors on the same page. It doesn't have to be anything formal, but go up and introduce everybody. So you guys, especially if you're on small acreages, you're probably chasing the same deer.
That's right.
So if you're going to be willing to show him, hey, this is a 3-year-old I want to see make it to next year, the small acreage property owners are the ones that get so fearful that the neighbor's going to shoot their bucks. So they're going to end up shooting deer a year before they normally would if they were going to track the land, just out of fear. If you can establish a relationship with your neighbors, and get a management plan put together with them, whether it's, okay, what are we planting this year? Can we do a seed order together? How many does do we need to take off? How many did you take off last year? Those are the types of things you can accomplish, even though you might only have 100 acres. If you got a couple neighbors in the neighborhood that have similar sized tracts, you can end up managing a pretty good chunk of ground more intensely.
Oh yeah, and that's the one thing that we have struggled with in the South, especially the deep South, is getting landowners to communicate and be willing to enter cooperative agreements. Most of them aren't, and I don't necessarily know why. I'm just kind of guessing here that they may view it as, well, I'm not going to let anybody have any other type of input or control on what I'm doing on my place. I'm going to do what I want to do, which is very Alabama of you, of the folks out there. But cooperatives are a very, very underutilized management tool here in the South.
No doubt.
Kentucky, I see that a lot too. We have one neighbor that we originally was part of our wildlife cooperative, and they had 800 acres adjacent to the rest that we were managing was around 1,200. So we had about 2,000 acres total. The 800-acre landowner had a brother, and the term that he didn't like in our agreement for the wildlife cooperative is there's a county road that runs down, does a big loop through the holler that we're in, down through. And all we wanted was, we're not telling you can't let anyone hunt your property, or we're not expecting to be able to go onto your property and hunt your property. We don't want anything to do with that. All I want to know is if you're giving someone permission to be down in here, let us know what vehicle they're driving and what their name is, and that they have permission to be down there.
Yeah.
One of the brothers took offense to that. Why do I need to tell you who I'm giving permission on my land? At the end of the day, what I was going for is, we're trying to cut down on poaching. I want to make sure that anyone that's down there, especially people down there with a firearm, are supposed to be down there and have permission to be down there. So you're going to run into that anywhere you go. But I said, if you're a new property owner, bake your neighbor's cookies. Do whatever you got to do.
Amen.
Invite them to a barbecue. Like, those are the type of things that you can do. And like, I got 2 neighbors that are part of the wildlife cooperative. They don't hunt. They run cattle on their farm, but they just like coming to the barbecue every year. And what did I get out of that? I got hunting permission on their cattle farms for basically nothing, just because they like being part of the group.
That's right.
So stuff like that does happen. And if you don't take the initiative to establish those relationships, they're not going to fall into your lap.
That's right. That's right.
That's good stuff. Let's see. This is kind of somewhat switching gears for this third question here. Best affordable supplemental feed combo. Again, that's pretty vague.
Combo.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm
like a number 3.
yeah. Combo number 1, combo number 6, whatever. I'm assuming I'm going to pair the supplemental feed with whatever I plan on planting, or I guess that's what I took from it. That may not be the case, but I guess that, I mean, affordable supplemental feed. Do you have a recommendation for something like that, or have you got any experience with dealing with that sort of stuff?
So supplemental fee, that's always something. When I'm writing my management plans, I'm very much the mindset that I'm trying to get Mother Nature to accommodate for as much of the nutrition and heavy
Mm-hmm.
lifting and cover as possible. So even my food plots I'm looking at, my food plots are typically my supplemental food source for my deer. Now I do have plenty of clients that can afford supplemental feed, and it's something they bring up most of the time when they've either been doing it in the past or they're interested in it, they'll bring it up. I never discourage people from doing it unless, if they're having issues with turkey recruitment, I might say, hey, maybe don't put protein pellets out there for your deer herd because that's going to increase the number of raccoons and stuff on the landscape that'll
Mm-hmm.
hurt your turkey population. So as far as like brands and which ones are affordable, I don't really have much of an input on that. Like I said, it's one of those things where if you can get all your ducks in a row with the habitat and it's something you want to do, just do your homework. I don't have anything personally to add
Mm-hmm.
to which direction to go. But the one thing that you should consider when you're thinking about that kind of stuff is that those protein pellets should never be like the only supplemental source they have. Like I
That's
said,
right.
they should be candy on top. They should be somewhere those deer can go if you get a drought. They should never be reliant on those resources.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always one of the last things I like to talk about. Maybe if it's a fixer-upper type property and there just isn't much on the landscape yet, that might be a situation where I'd say, hey, until we get a timber harvest done out here and get some more forage on the ground, get your food plot squared away, might be a good idea to look into something. But yeah, in terms of which one to go with, I unfortunately I don't have much of an input there.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I don't now. I used to years ago. We we took really all of the big players and emptied them out and put them in Ziploc bags and sent them off to a laboratory and did all the major testing. And look, everything that's on the bag is very, very accurate as compared to what you're going to get if you send it in for your own test. I mean, it's supposed to be. But there is a lot of difference, and then there's not. You really gotta remember what or how much deer can actually utilize. Number one, Zach hit the nail on the head. You don't want them getting all of the resources from that unless it's a special case scenario where there's an issue there. The two rules that I have for supplemental feeding is they have to be consistent and don't consistently done, consistently fed, and then don't swap up in the middle. If you go to changing feeds just all at once abruptly, you can have a negative impact. One, they can either stop eating it completely, or the formulation difference may cause some problems with the ruminant stomach side of things. But I've always had a question, and this is deeper than Zach and I probably even thought about going in most times with our backgrounds. But I would really like to get with a nutritionist and folks like that. And a question that I have had for a long time, and I think you and I talked about it yesterday, riding down the road,
Yep.
is most people are looking at these feeds and these meals are looking at them from just a class of animal, not necessarily deer. So they're looking at ruminants. Well, deer are very different than anything else in one regard, primarily one regard, and that's antler production. And they're robbing a ton of those nutrients from the skeletal system. So I am curious on how all that plays a role. They're not just using the nutrition that they're getting then for antler growth or body growth or anything else. They're robbing from excess that they've had over the past their lifespan, but especially the last year after the antler drop and then start the process again. So I've always had some questions there on how efficient some of those feeds are with transfer. But I'm not smart enough to understand some of that. I've got to talk to somebody that really knows.
Well, in terms of the combination, I want to get back to the question where he said something about a combination
Yeah.
feed. When I was working in Texas, my first job after I graduated from college was I moved down to Texas. I was a ranch hand and a hunting guide on a high fence operation down there. And my manager, it was the first year he started doing it. I should call him back, because a long time ago now, and see how it's been going. But it's pretty common practice. I've been seeing it all over. Is once the rut starts to kick in, you start putting out some. So we'd do protein all year long. All year long. We wouldn't miss a day. He'd even send me out there after a little rain shower, a little sprinkle, to make sure I could clean off the opening those deer stick their mouth in, because he says they didn't like wet, mushy protein pellets. So we were doing everything possible to make sure that they had protein pellets in them at all times. But as the rut started to kick in, he was adamant of getting cottonseed out there and putting that as another supplemental food source because of all the fats in it. It's really good for replenishment and just filling up those reserves after the rut. So if that's more, just trying to see if maybe that's the kind of question he was asking as far as pellets and something else. Cottonseed might be a good supplement, especially post-rut.
And it's interesting you say that. I mean, we were just in South Texas doing a deer capture episode and doing some quail hunting. And the Faith and I guess it's
Comanche.
Yeah, Comanche project. They are going to study the utilization of the cottonseed. So the project actually just started. They've got a doctoral candidate and veterinarian that's doing the research. So I'm excited to see what comes out of that. Matt Moore and I actually talked about it a little bit while we were turkey hunting. But there's going to be a lot of information out there in the coming years for cottonseed.
Yeah.
And it's getting a little more popular here too. I've seen, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 pretty large landowners doing the same thing, just trying it down here.
I mean, to see how it's been working out. I'll have to call my boss and see how he's been, see if he's still doing it, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I think that, I could be wrong, but I think that this question stems from the same kind of school of thought with the small properties deal, because there's a lot of people down here that have small acreage properties, and it's almost like you feel like you need to be doing something to help yourself because your property is so small. Yeah. It's like, I want to make it as attractive as it can possibly be for deer to stay on my property. So even though from a nutritional benefit for a wild deer herd, we've all talked about this, like there's not a what'd you say, that studies were showing like at the most a net 2% gain in like antler score or something like that.
That's about right. Yep.
So it's like, I don't know if the cost is justified in most situations, but it's almost like you just feel like you need to do something. You need to do something to help because my property is just so small. If I don't do it and somebody else does, then,
Well, and that's the same boat we have gotten in now with the bait, the corn. If you don't corn here in Alabama during hunting season, then you're going to struggle. I mean, we're seeing it firsthand. If we've got one neighbor that baits, and that's how they hunt and how they kill their deer, and that's fine. It's legal. But if we let a feeder run out for one day, that buck, he's going and figuring it out and finding corn. And when he finds it, he's going to stay there till it runs out a lot of the time. From what we saw, they did. They may let it run dry and him, find our pile and stay for our pile for 3 or 4 days. But we got to the point that we were putting corn out every 48 hours just to try to keep some bucks at home.
That's the only reason I have corn out during hunting season. It's because I know my neighbor's got a big pile of corn. So.
I hate it. Yeah. I hate it.
Kentucky, I'm hearing, so my farm's in Kentucky, and I'm hearing whispers that, and they're already, they added an extra month or 2, I think, to where you can't bait during turkey season. And then some after, and CWD is becoming more prevalent in the state. And I think it's just a matter of time before they pull the plug on the baiting situation. And I'm one of the rare people that couldn't care less. I'm actually excited about the idea.
Oh, I would be tickled if Alabama did away with baiting. I would be ecstatic. It wouldn't hurt my feelings, and I hate to say, because I got a bunch of buddies in the industry with cameras, but it wouldn't hurt my feelings if cell cams
I think there should be a delay on them, like a mandatory 24-hour, 48-hour delay until they send them to you.
Yeah, because look, and I get it, a lot of people they hunt to harvest, and occasionally we're after a specific deer, and that's what we're hunting for, is to harvest that deer. But bait and cell cameras have made us extremely successful at targeting age classes and killing those age classes. And it didn't used to be that way. Everything was a little more even kill, so to speak.
Random.
Yeah, I used to say the easiest property to develop a good population, balanced population, was one in the South that had been dog hunted, where they were just shot more or less indiscriminately when they crossed the road. When there was a shot opportunity, it was taken. And we managed several properties that were heavily dog hunted, and they, by and large, had, just from the get-go, they had less deer, but their sex ratios and the age distribution was just really good. So that worries me a little bit.
Landowners hate to hear this, but I'd much rather have a client with a property in a low deer density area than a
100%.
area.
100%.
For sure. Let's see. We can keep trugging through these. This is actually kind of an interesting question, because I think I know what the guy means. It says, at what point do you say that you have done all you can do to a property? Assuming that you've had, assuming that you've had somebody out there, I guess, to kind of give you some direction on what you need to do, and you've taken those steps and put those plans into action. At what point do you be like, man, I feel like I've kind of done everything that I can do, make it the best it can be? Does that ever happen?
No, well, I'd say if you could get to a point where your food plots, your prescribed fire, your mowing, all that is on a schedule, and you can repeat that schedule year after year and have the same results, I guess you could be in that area. But no, because think about if EHD goes through, or if your neighbor's property switches hands and all of a sudden the people move in aren't shooting any deer, so your deer numbers start to jump up, or and you talk about succession, things are all constantly getting older until a disturbance happens. There's always something you could be doing. There's always invasive species encroaching on your property. There's land use practices change around you. Nothing is stagnant in biology. I think that's why I fell in love with the field.
Y'all keep talking. I got to go let the dogs out.
It's a soft science, and that's because everything's constantly changing. So I don't know if there's ever a point where you say, "Yep, done, been here, done that." But the more regularity you can have to your management calendar, where you don't have these big projects you're worrying about for years in advance, the more of that kind of stuff you can chip away, the better position you'll be in, but you're never going to be done.
Right. Well, I know that, Jeremy, I've heard him say before, if you have property, assuming that there's some timber on it, like timber harvest is part of your management plan at some point. Like, that you're going to have to do that at some point. Now, that's very, very I don't know what the right word there is, I guess intermittent or something, but not something you're doing on a every year or even every other year basis, but once every 15 years or something like that. You're going to need to take some timber off the property to help it out too. So,
well, and you can be doing stuff in the meantime to accelerate when you're ready to harvest. You can be doing a crop tree release. You can just be thinning your wood lots. There's all sorts of stuff you can be doing,
right?
Whether you think you're done or not.
Gotcha.
Y'all still knocking out that one?
Yeah.
All right. So one thing I wanted to add, and Zach may have already said it, but land management is rarely, and wildlife management, let me back up, land and wildlife is rarely ever going to be passive. Mm-hmm. It's almost always active. There's almost always something to do. Yeah. Now, you can run out of time and you can run out of money.
Well, I told, and when you were in there, that I've heard you mention before about timber harvest. Like that may not be something you do every year, but at
Right.
some point you're going to need to take some timber off the property.
Yes.
You know.
Look, timber. We have clients that they just don't want to cut timber, but it has a lifespan. You know, so you might as well manage it proactively and work within its limitations. Kind of same with we talk about burning. There's certain things that you need to do and certain things that you don't in different timber stands, because you can speed up a lifespan for a hardwood tree if you're doing a lot of burning. You can cause that thing a premature mortality, but pines really have to be active.
Yeah.
Most landowners want big deer and big timber until you
That's it.
You got to break the news to them that the two don't usually go hand in hand.
That's it. I have had to tell people just point blank. You talk about the big timber because it's pretty. If you ride in your place and it just looks beautiful, manicured, hey, it's not for wildlife more than likely. If
you can kick a soccer ball in the understory,
yeah,
probably time to harvest something.
That's right. Absolutely.
So this question here is kind of funny because it has nothing to do with the South, and I'm genuinely curious how this individual found us because we're nowhere near his location. His question is: I live in Delaware. Had quail as a kid. Haven't seen any in 20 years. Thoughts?
Probably never going to see any.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably never going to see them around your place again, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where quail, the hard part about quail is their home range is so small. So they don't disperse very far. Once they're gone, they're typically gone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hadn't seen them in years, it's one of the things that breaks my heart about my farm. Every single management decision I'm making is to improve the quail habitat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably never going to have a quail on my place. I was talking to the biologist. They said a couple of years ago there was a covey or two across the river. So I'm holding out hope, but I've never heard them. I'd think I'd be able to hear them across that river.
Yeah.
It's just once they're gone, it's hard to get them back.
That's
and
it.
you can't really supplementally stock them either. You look at all the studies, it's not going to be successful. It's a constant. It's a put and take environment if that's what you want to get into.
That's right. That's exactly right. Quail, he nailed it. I mean, you got to have a source population. If you walk outside in the fall or in the springtime, when they're doing their calls consistently, if you can't hear a call, chances are you're not going to get a quail. Now, there is a caveat to that. If you've got deep enough pockets, you can do translocation projects. We worked with a translocation project when I was leaving the state and then after in Alabama, and that particular individual has a huntable population of quail now, but I couldn't begin to tell you how much that particular landowner spent to achieve that. I can tell you we took a unthinned pine plantation down to about a 35 or a 40 basil area, and the acres that we did that on, we ran mulchers behind every acre, mulching all the debris, and then put in 100+ acres of brood fields, tying everything together. Not my place to ask him, but I run that type of business, so I'm pretty familiar with what things cost. He was in the realm of $10,000+ a day in equipment cost. That was sitting there working.
And what is the success rate of those type projects? I mean,
highly successful as long as you follow the plan.
Okay.
If you don't follow the plan, what that particular individual had to do is he started a extremely rigorous trapping program where he has he's using box traps primarily for raccoons, possums, things like that. Using cage traps and baiting them with different times of year, different things, but they have a little radio signal on them. When it drops, it sends a signal to his barn, so they don't have to ride out and check every trap every day. He just gets a signal at the barn and gets that particular nest predator out and dispatches it and moves on. But then he also did all the clearing, all the brood fields, and they couldn't hunt it for 5 years. I think they're just outside of that now. But
I'd have a hard time ever hunting it, putting that much money into a project.
yes, amen. And now that property doesn't seem to get a lot of utilization from them, so it's actually on the market. If anybody out there that's interested in buying an awesome quail place, I don't have it listed, but I know all about it and can show it to you. Anybody that's got about 18.5 million, you can have it.
There you go. For the low price of 18.5.
Yeah, and if somebody's listening that's looking for a tract like that, I mean it's out there on John Kohler's site. They've got it listed. It's a beautiful property, know it inside and out, and hunted on it. Whoever buys it, if that owner don't keep it, they're gonna have a top-notch place.
No doubt. I would hope so for that kind of price tag.
Well, it's a big place.
Yeah, lots of acres. Let's see. Last one here, last question that I've got. I thought this was pretty interesting. Can deer movement be patterned year to year? And then in parentheses here is based off of trail camera history. So just because you had a buck that showed up on your place on whatever, December the 20th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, is that an indicator that you can rely on that sort of data year after year to pattern deer to kind of move in the same time frame, same windows?
I say yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to nail down. Are you talking individual deer?
Well, I was about to say, I mean, assuming that deer is still alive.
I'm assuming he means an individual buck. Can you pattern
an
individual
that was
buck
the way
based
I
off
took it.
Previous year's movement?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say yes because I've seen it. And I got buddy. He hunts West Virginia, very very remote Bolt Mountain in West Virginia. You got a picture of this deer showed up 3 days in like almost the same exact 3 days, within 1 day on either side for like 4 years in a row. And it was the only time he had cameras out there all year long. And what they're doing with a lot of these collar data is they're finding out these bucks do have home range shifts and stuff
That's
like
right.
that. So maybe you're just on a travel route between one home range and another for that buck. And he's probably going to transition from one to the other at the same point in the season year over year. So yeah, if you do catch on to it, you got a camera in the right spot. I think that's a very, very realistic scenario to find yourself in where you can predict that deer, if he's still alive, might show up at that same spot the next year.
Yeah. I don't disagree any. And I'll say even going further that it may not, besides tracking individual deer, that may occur for other deer too. Just using that same movement. I've been in Kansas the last several years. Let's see. Yeah, the 2 bucks that I have killed were 24 hours apart, a year apart. In the same tree. And then we had another deer known. Now, so this was an individual deer. We had another deer known that was seen a 3 to 5 day period 2 years ago. And then same period the following year, we started seeing him and he got killed. So he primarily lived on a neighbor, like Zach was kind of talking about. Their home ranges could shift, travel corridors can change a little bit. We actually got confirmation that deer didn't really spend a whole lot of time where we were hunting, but did spend a ton of time on the neighbor, lived there, and he made some type of excursion, and it cost him.
So I think it's the same reason you find sheds year over year in the same location, seemingly random hillside. Is it something about that area is going to keep that buck consistent? I've found the same antler from the same deer in the same spot around the same time of year, year over year. It happens.
Look, they're creatures of habit because one, if they've made that particular path at a certain time or really any time, and they've survived it, well, they're comfortable with it. So they'll continue doing that particular thing unless they encounter something that causes them to stop.
I feel like, I mean, I'm not saying that it's wrong or that it's impossible, but I would say just I'm no biologist by any stretch, but my mind immediately goes to like deer density on a property has to influence that to some degree. Like if a like both of those examples I've noticed. You said West Virginia, you said Kansas, not Alabama, and the reason I'm saying that is like when you've got you know populations that are just so out of whack, buck to doe ratios are so out of whack.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's as predictable, if that makes sense.
I would say if it's something that's out of whack, it's probably not as predictable. But if it's something that's managed and fairly well taken care of, that it becomes more predictable. Brock would be one to ask that question because I don't know what it is. He can't pick his kids out of a lineup if they're standing more than about 10 or 15 feet away. But a deer, I mean, he knows around us over there, he'll tell you where that deer is, what farm he's on, which landowner. He's like, oh, yeah, I got pictures of that. And he would really be interested to ask that question again. So we need to remember that.
Yeah. Because I mean, I like I said, I've hunted places in the South, especially in Alabama, that it's like, man, that buck is just going wherever he's got to go. You know what I mean? It's like there's no rhyme or reason. I'm going after does, or I'm going after where I don't get shot at, or
run away from dogs.
Yes. Like I think there's got to be some influence that.
Oh, there definitely is. The only, and of course you know where we're at, and if you're smart, you can figure it out where I live. But I've had one solid buck on my place the whole time we've lived there, and it came through. No, 4 years ago now. Time's getting away from me. He came through and he was there for about 3 days. Got him on camera all 3 days. Next year, same thing. Now it wasn't the exact same time frame. It was about 10 or 12 days later. But then, that deer hadn't showed back up after the second year. So I'm going to assume he got killed or hit in the road well, he didn't get hit in the road or I'd have known it.
Yeah. He got shotted.
Yeah, he probably did. Because he was a good deer. He was a 140 type deer. That's good for us.
A good backyard buck.
Yeah,
those don't last long around here.
No, they don't. They get shot in spotlights and thermals and the whole nine.
No doubt. Well, as far as my questions or listener questions, that's all the ones we've got. Unless you got anything else you want to throw at him, there, Mr. Jeremy.
Yeah, well, we certainly can. What do you got going on up there now? I mean, as far as I know, you're doing some classes and whatnot now, but from Whetstone, what's big for you right now?
So I'm real excited. I got my first publication coming out in Turkey Call this next issue. So
Okay.
The June-July issue, I wrote an article talking about the importance of thermal cover and considerations for turkey poults. It's one of the things everyone. People talk about predators, nest predators, this, that, or the other hurting those turkey poults. But at the end of the day, the number one killer is typically hypothermia or overheating, honestly, in a lot of those circumstances. So I'm excited about that. It was a bucket list publication for me. Currently working on a management plan for an awesome client of mine, and he's in Dixon, Tennessee. So I'm excited to get that in. I'm juggling a couple things. I'm trying to do my classes and work on his management plan in the evening. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, you're a busy fella.
Yeah, and I got a lot going on my personal farm too. So we got some huge projects we did. We did about 15 acres of clearings this year, pine savanna restoration, they're hard oak savanna restoration sites up on my ridge top. So I've been all over the place, trying to keep my farm in line, trying to schedule up this next year. I'd really like to do a learn and burn or something out on my farm and kind of showcase my property. So
that's cool.
Got a lot cooking right now for Whetstone.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, was that? And if people want to reach out to you or are looking for site visit, consult, or stuff like that, how would people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website's whetstonehabitat.com. That's WHETSTONE habitat.com. Most of the social media sites, YouTube, Instagram, I'm at Whetstone Habitat. Feel free to reach out, shoot me a DM, fill out a form submission on my page. I got a few openings left still this summer. If anybody's looking to get something done here in the near future, get a hold of me as soon as possible because those spots fill up quick. But like I said, I travel quite a bit. I'm familiar with most of this country at this point, managing for whitetail. So if don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, and I recommend they do. Zach, we did a lot of talking, a lot of research, and trying to determine if my mind just went totally blank. I mean, just shot, y'all.
I think you're getting ready to compliment me.
Yeah, he was.
I was trying, and then I don't know. It just poof. I guess I'm still tired. But anyway, yeah. I mean, if anybody is looking for somebody that does really good work, that's where I was headed. We talk a lot on this podcast about vetting who you're working with,
Right. Yep.
And we vetted Zack really, really well.
Yeah.
Not that he necessarily needed it, but really, really well. Had a lot of good conversations with Zack and with some other folks, and actually came up and talked with you, and had a good lunch and good visit. So looking forward to interacting with you a lot more.
Yeah, I'm excited. I should be heading to Alabama here not too long, so
Okay.
Yeah,
I
man.
should be. Maybe I'll stop by in person here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Look us up. We'll get out and tour around Gunnersville Lake and wet a line a little bit, something if you want to.
I ain't talking my language.
There you go.
Yeah,
I just won't bring my boat. I got both my fish finders are out of commission at the moment, so I've been fishing fine the last few trips. Hit one too many rocks with my trolling motor.
Oh yeah.
It happens, especially if you go to Gunnersville. People assume that in between the islands and stuff like that, it's like, oh, this is super deep, and it's not.
No, it's
People
not at all.
tear their stuff up flying through there.
We were fishing in an area. Now, I know you're not familiar with it, or don't figure you are, Zach, but South Saudi area, and locals will know it. There's a pond out there in one of the flats that when it was flooded, all they did was they cut the timber, what trees were there, and just flooded everything. So there's a pond dam with stumps on top of it that some people don't know about. And we were out there fishing, and I mean wearing some bass out. It's been years ago, but my buddy, grew up there, and of course I learned it, with him. But this guy's just coming, just flying down. You know how people do. They'll run by you running 30 knots. But we started waving at him, trying to get him to slow down, and he hit one of those stumps, running good, knocked a foot just clean off, come to a slow stop out there, and it's like, what happened? Well, we're waving at you for a reason,
Trying.
Yeah, I thought you were just saying hi.
Yeah, no. But yeah, that's Gunnersville can make you look like a fool sometimes, and it's not as bad as was it Weiss Lake?
Yeah.
Ooh, man,
Yeah,
it's shallow.
It's stumpy and bad.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but a couple of weeks ago, the MLF event, there was a big boat accident.
Yeah, someone died, didn't they?
A couple people, actually, and it was kind of strange. There's a guy that went to the same high school I did. He's several years younger than me, but he was one of the guys that got hit, and he survived it, but has had facial reconstruction, surgeries and stuff. It was bad, because people just, stuff happens, but
Oh yeah, stuff happens.
but it's just you can't be too cautious on the water, and But
That's one reason. If you come down and we go fishing, it won't be on my boat because I don't have one anymore. But we can borrow one.
yeah, we'll get one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or we can do like the locals and fish off the bank.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, can I plug my newsletter?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Hey,
Plug
you
whatever.
plug whatever you get ready to plug, buddy.
So I started a newsletter last year. It's called Whetstone Weekly. If you go to my Instagram page or go to my website, you can find a link to it, Whetstone Weekly. I talk all things habitat. I talk a little bit about, current events going on in natural resource space. Got a lot of crap the other week for talking about the Forest Service cuts. And so
Oh yeah.
it's a little more, I'm not confined just to talking habitat on there, but I try to keep it pretty nuts and bolts as far as
Yeah.
what's going on in the habitat world or what's going on. Cause I got plenty of public land hunter buddies and followers.
Oh yeah.
So I try to keep everyone engaged on that newsletter. But if you just Google Whetstone Weekly, you should be able to find me on there. I'm trying to get that thing to grow. I'm really proud of it. So by all means, if anybody's out there looking for something to read on Wednesdays, please subscribe.
Oh, absolutely. Zach, do you keep up with proposed legislation in other states much?
If I come across it, I'll read into it, but not really.
Have you heard anything about HB 509 in Alabama?
Not fill me in.
Okay, so current proposed legislation, and I actually think they were trying to get it on the floor to vote on relatively soon, was to transition deer in. And I'm going to be a little vague here because I've read it and I've slept, so I don't remember whether or not, how fine-tuned this is. But deer inside breeder facilities, and I'm going to air quote high fences. I don't know that they're wanting to include high fences, but I know specifically the breeder side is that they're wanting to transition them to private ownership as livestock.
I don't like that idea. I understand it. I understand why they want to do it. To me, wildlife is sacred. I think a lot of the ill effects we've been dealing with over the last 20, 30 years because the CWD has a lot to do with those industries not being as well regulated as I'd like to see. And I think deeming them as livestock when they can escape and breed and contaminate wild populations, it's just a slippery slope. So that's kind of my opinion on what I just heard.
Well, yeah, and look, that's really my take. I know why they're doing it, and from a certain extent, I don't have an issue with it. And a certain extent, I do. I do believe wildlife, is sacred. It was really put forth by our state that they belong to everybody, and now changing the regulation to some private ownership. I don't agree with it, but look, I work with breeders and high fences, all over the South, so we've got a little contention there. But my big concern is really the regulation side and the enforcement side for Alabama, because they would be going under Alabama Department of Ag and Industry, and I know how many employees they have to, check on these things and actually go out and visit. And it's not near enough with the number of high fences and breeders that we have, on the landscape in Alabama, and there's becoming more. So that's my trouble. At least with game and fish, there are enough employees out there that they can go out and monitor and check and do the very basics that are required of the high fence and the breeders, and check on those. I don't agree that we need to get any deeper than what we are necessarily with them. They've got the regulations that they need to abide by. Let's just keep on with what we got. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm curious to see how our legislative body reacts to it. Generally, we in Alabama, we are very, very open to or closed off really on property rights. We don't, our legislative body don't get into dictating what somebody can or can't do on property, but we'll see.
And I could also see, and again, this is all new to me, but I could see someone making the case that, look, in the livestock industry, we already have all these facilities built, we have all these disease testing locations, that or the other. So maybe they do have resources they could tap into that a state agency might have to fund out of pocket or something. I don't know. I'm just right off the rip. It's one of those things where when you take something from the public trust and put it in private hands, it's I don't know.
Yep. I'm still sorting out how I ultimately feel about it, but right now, from the outside, I'm not for it. And another thing that I questioned the guy because of some things that you can do legally in Alabama, if somebody, encumbers your property in some way. I'm curious if somebody, and this would be it would have to be negligence as far as they knew they were breaking the law and bringing deer in that weren't supposed to be here. But say somebody were caught and they were bringing deer in from another state and they did happen to have CWD, and now you've got CWD in a new spot. If it's private ownership, then I'm curious, because of the litigious nature of our society now, if another landowner that may have decreased property values now because of CWD might go after somebody that brought in deer negligently, and those could be big dollar figures. So I've just got some questions on how all this would work, but they're probably never going to get answered until the time comes, until it happens.
We're getting closer and closer to like CWD, like testing animals before.
Oh yeah, we're getting close.
Trending in the right direction. So I'm optimistic about all that stuff. And in the meantime, everyone wants to talk about CWD, and it's like we can only control what we can control. And
that's it. I agree with all the big names out there that are really saying state agencies haven't done a very good job, because I agree. We really haven't from a state agency standpoint, but I don't really know how we could have done it better. I mean, we need to continue learning, and it seems like some of the state agencies want to continue with failed attempts, and hopefully that'll slow down and stop. I think Alabama has done pretty good. The biggest thing that has got everybody stirred up here is, if and when CWD is found close to a fence of any kind, going in and being able to harvest their deer, I don't think we've had to do any of that, to my knowledge. I know we hadn't when I was still with Game and Fish. The only time that I know for sure that anybody had deer killed by the state was deer that were brought in illegally. And I mean,
you have to condemn the property too.
We did.
Once it's there.
Well, there was no CWD, so property wasn't condemned. But,
it was just a deer release.
Yeah, they brought in deer from another state, and they did back tracing, proved it, and the whole nine. And we did go out there and depopulate that fence and tested everything. That was
I remember reading
long few days.
It was a case study from Wisconsin. I want to say Wisconsin. I can't remember, but they did bring in CWD positive deer, and it was funny because after they got done eradicating the deer, I'm pretty sure what I read was they had to build an even bigger fence to keep all the deer out of that area.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm still verdict's still out on CWD. Look, the sky's not falling, but I still think there's so much we don't know about it that it's hard to say anything definitively.
Something to keep an eye on.
That's right. I mean, it's.
I miss the deer. Have you ever been to the Southeast Deer Study Group?
This past year was the second deer study group meeting that I have missed since 2001.
The one in Maryland, I didn't go.
Yep. I went. The last time it was in Maryland.
Were you in New Orleans?
Yes.
Yeah, I was there too.
Yep. So I started going in 2001, and I didn't go to Maryland this past year, and I didn't go the year that it was in Athens at the QDMA building or facility there.
I think next year, where are we at? West Virginia, I think. Maybe. I don't know.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Purple Fairy.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Anyone in the deer world, if you're looking to get the latest and greatest information on anything coming out at any of these universities, looking at, whether it's disease, population, deer movement. The Southeast Deer Study Group is a fantastic organization to get yourself tied into.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. It's about the only way I keep up with a lot of guys that I know from outside the state, and we've been going long enough now. I'm a little older than you. We've been going long enough. Matt Moore and I were talking about it, that a lot of our buddies that we hung out with and know, they are becoming the new deer coordinators, across the country, and taking up some of those higher roles. So it's going to be neat to see, my immediate colleagues start taking up those roles across the country, and seeing how things change.
I don't think you can pay me enough money in the world to take that job.
No,
It's not that I
no.
don't think I'm capable. It's that I value my life.
Well, and look, and I don't know if you know Chuck or not. I'm sure you know who he is, but I don't know I guess he's gone now, totally. I knew he was stepping down, but Chuck Sykes, that was our director for several years now. He and I brought it up on the last episode, but one of the things he always said, who do I piss off? 50% over here that want it, or 50% that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the exact role you're talking about. Being in the government agency, making calls, half the people are going to be pissed off at you all the time, and half of them are going to be happy with you all the time. You never know.
Yep.
It's a tough job. I don't envy them at all. I really don't.
Once you start messing with people's traditions, they get a little squirmy.
Amen. Amen to that. I can't. Ooh. The only thing worse would be, to me, would be being an actual game warden, an officer on the ground. I would enjoy it, but the stuff they put up with is awful. It's bad.
No doubt. Well, Zach, I think I don't want to keep you any longer, man, but we really appreciate you hanging out, and especially short notice. I think I texted you or called you yesterday and was like, hey, man, you want to jump on the podcast? When?
As long as I get
tomorrow?
back from my class in time.
Yeah. So we appreciate it, man. And like Jeremy has already said, Zach is in Tennessee, kind of central Tennessee, from what I understand. So if you're in that area, neck of the woods, or southern Kentucky, of course, he goes all over the country to visit clients. But as far as local guys, if you're looking for somebody who knows their stuff, reach out to Zach. He'll do you right.
Oh, 100%.
So,
yep.
And you guys
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. Well, hey, excited about it, and hopefully have you on some more.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep. I like listening to him talk a lot better than I do having to talk. So just plug and play here.
Yeah.
I got lots of opinions. I'm not shy about them.
You guys reach out, make sure you give him lots of business, and who knows, he may order some more hats.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. I'm running. How do you know I'm running low? I'm still waiting for
That's right.
ones, Taylor.
Yeah, shameless plug. But yeah, we do appreciate it. And guys, listen, I know that we have talked about this until we are blue in the face, and you're probably tired of hearing about it. We're still working on another little project that we've got cooking right now.
Big project.
Yeah, and if the reason we haven't said what it is, and we haven't put anything out, is because we just want to get it right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of different things that need to be right for this thing to be successful. So
and more importantly, a lot of money.
Yeah.
That has to be paid for somehow, so we have to keep working to pay for it.
Yes, and so it's with that in mind. Speaking of money and stuff, please, if you have not subscribed to us, all social outlets, it's The Southern U. You can see it, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts can be streamed, listened to, we're there. Had a comment last night. I think somebody asked if we were on Apple. I'm like, yes, absolutely. So please subscribe. It means a ton to us, and specifically on YouTube. If you would follow on all social, but if you'll subscribe on YouTube, it helps us get to a place where we can start to monetize some of our content. It's a whole lot of fun to do this, but it is very difficult for all of us to get, pull away from things that otherwise would have put money in our pockets to do this for free.
Right.
So if you guys would do that, tell a friend, shoot an invite to somebody, we would greatly appreciate that. And we got some more stuff planned, episode-wise, some more habitat stuff. And as we start moving out of spring and into summer stuff, it's weird because turkey season is over for us.
Yeah.
And
Me too.
a lot of places now are just kind of getting cranked up in the Midwest.
Oh yeah.
Stuff like that, but we're over with. So we're gonna have some more summertime kind of off-season type stuff coming up too. So.
Oh, if you're a landowner, hold off on mowing your fields for a few more weeks. Let those turkey nests hatch.
Yes.
And
Are
then
you
wait a couple
saying
more
no
weeks.
mow May?
Yeah. Let the fawns hit the ground.
I wanted to joke, and I may still do it because I'm about to hook a bush hog up at my farm. But I have no deer. I have no deer and no turkey. So I wanted to film it and post it like on native habitat managers and all that. Just put no mow tall grass. Oh me, but yeah, it's time. There's a bunch. We got pictures of some poults. I guess yesterday.
Nice.
So it's nice, and this will. Of course, you're further north than we are. I had a buddy send some pictures of poults the second week of March.
Whoa.
Yep. Obviously an outlier, but hey,
Still crazy.
yeah. I mean, when it in the deep South, when it gets warm, they start doing their thing. And we did have an early warm snap.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that got some of those birds fired up.
Well, and
I had some poults run around in September on my farm last year, or end of August maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's getting
Well,
back there
and
then.
it's-
Yeah, other side of the spectrum.
I'll say this too. Like we've actually had a spring this time. Like it's not been blazing hot.
Well,
Like,
it can't get hot when it rains every day.
I know, but I mean, like I go back to my HVAC days, and I remember like right now it's May the 7th.
You're normally sweating.
Oh my gosh, man! First week of May, it's 90 degrees. It's
Yeah.
terrible, and it's hasn't been that bad so far. So, but anyways, we appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Zach. Thanks so much, man.
Yep.
And,
Y'all go check Zach out. Like, share his stuff too.
all the things, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Out.